chatting with Michael James of the Mid Report talking Navy football. So here's where I think I might have screwed up last year because I drink my own Kool-Aid and I buy my own Kool-Aid. I don't want to talk down because I'm a big fan of Navy at the end of the day. I just support the Naval Academy. But I was not expecting a 3-7 season, and more so there was some games where it just looked like they were out-disciplined, which was the disappointing part on my end. Is that my assessment being too cruel in the situation, or am I a little bit right on that?
I don't think you're too cruel necessarily. I don't know if the problem was discipline as much as it was preparation. If you look at what happened last year, Navy didn't have spring practice. When the team reassembled for fall camp, they didn't have any contact in practices until the week before the first game. So when you're not practicing for real, you're never establishing that kind of foundation that you need to execute the option offense. And on the defensive side, they had 5 or 6 games where they gave up 250 yards rushing per game. They just weren't physically ready for the demands of a Division I football season. And especially when you're leading off the season playing a team like BYU, who's very good, it was a recipe for disaster. And Coach Niumatalolo admitted it. He did it out of abundance of caution. No one knew how to handle anything with all the pandemic. And he says, look, I knew what this would do to us from a football perspective, but I was just going to err on the side of caution. I think there's a legitimate criticism to be had about, well, if you're not going to prepare the right way, then why are you playing? But then the flip side of that is, well, what would happen if you don't play? I mean, Navy's players don't get that extra season this year. They don't get to redshirt and come back for an extra year. So are you going to tell these guys you don't get to play your senior year? Are you going to, there's a lot of things to consider there. So it was the worst of all worlds. But just about every problem that Navy had last year can be traced back to that lack of preparation. Maybe there were other problems or would have, but we never would know because it wasn't the actual truly prepared Navy team that we're accustomed to seeing. So it won't be the same this season. I can't guarantee that the record's going to be great, but just what the product you see on the field is not going to look the way it looked last year.
Fair enough. And I mean, I'm easily sold, so you sold me. One of my favorite players out of all college football last season, and I'm actually he's part of my images of 2020. I'm including was Diego Fego. I'm sorry, some loud noises crashed in. I don't know what happened there. I really like his style of play. He's just one of those persons that he just finds himself around the football. Do you mind talking a little bit more about him? And then just how I assume he's going to be the centerpiece of the defense this year.
Yeah, he is. He's team captain this year. Inside, plays Mike linebacker, and he's really just an exceptional player. He's big. He's 6'3", 240. Which for a Service Academy middle linebacker, that's big. But he has the athletic ability. He has some range, so he can drop back in coverage. He spends a lot of his time at the line of scrimmage. Just anticipating the snap count and getting into the backfield. He's really good place, but what's really been the highlight of this offseason has been his leadership. He's really been the guy that the defense turns to just look at how he plays, how he prepares. So the mental side of the game, he's a smart player too. So he's really all around everything you want in a football player, everything you want in a midshipman, everything you want in someone you can build a defense around. And Navy's lucky to have him.
Let's go flip side. And to run the triple option, you need somebody at the helm. And I think you're obviously way closer to the situation than I'm not. than I am, and I know it's still spring, but do you think it's going to be Xavier Arlen or, and I'm going to say this name wrong, Taya Lavavante?
Ty Lavatai.
Ty Lavatai. Okay.
And it is neck and neck. And it's not just necessarily those two. You know, there's Masai Maynor, who's a junior, who's at third string. He's not quite at that level, but Ivan Jasper, the offensive coordinator, made a point to mention that he also had a very good spring, and he feels confident with all three guys. You know, when you look at the difference between they're two very different players. Arline, he's a tremendous athlete. Was a All-American lacrosse player in high school. Was actually recruited to play lacrosse, and came to Navy because he decided that football was kind of his first love. But he's a smaller guy. You know, he's 5'9", maybe 175, 180 on a soaking wet. He's
Rolling blanket.
Yeah, well, I mean, he doesn't necessarily have tremendous straight ahead speed, but he's very shifty. He's very quick. He can cut very well. He's a good runner. Lavatai is bigger. He's 6'2", 210. He's also a good athlete. You know, he played quarterback in high school, but one year he actually suffered an injury and came back as a wide receiver for a year just because that's what he physically could do. So he's got the ability to run. The coaches when the coaches talked about Lavatai, what they liked about him, other than his very strong arm, was that he didn't seem like he was necessarily running the ball all that great, but then every time the coaches would look up this spring, they notice, oh, he gained 5 yards, he gained 6 yards. He just has that consistency where he's chipping away, he's able to move the ball, keep the sticks moving, that the coaches really liked. So it's a stylistic defense. Talking to Ivan Jasper, really what's going to come down to is just who can manage the offense, who knows how to get the ball to the right person at the right time. It's neck and neck right now, and I can't say who's going to come out on top. I think, you know, Arline had some experience last year, started the Army game, started a few games at the end of the season. Didn't really run the Navy offense the way you would expect it to. They kind of tinkered with it just to figure out a way. You know, he was talking a freshman last year coming in and without having spring practice, without, you know, having a real fall camp to be thrown in and have to run the triple option. It was kind of a miracle that he was as far along as he was, but it really wasn't that far along. So there's really no way to say who it's going to be, and that's going to be the focus really in fall camp for Navy fans. It's just who's going to win the quarterback job.
So this fall, or when the season starts, you guys, and I think this is the perfect draw, you're playing Marshall opening weekend, who I'm still in shock over. They fired their head coach after 13 seasons. Is that the mindset of right now, is just, hey, we got Marshall, we're going to start the year 1-0, or do you think, how are you looking at the start of the season?
It's interesting because usually Navy would start the season with an FCS opponent and kind of get things kind of warmed up a little bit before diving into the bulk of the schedule, but they don't have that luxury this year. You know, that the customary tune-up game is replaced with Marshall, who played in Conference USA championship game last year. You know, they're no slouch. They have a very good defense. I think overall there's a sense of urgency with the Navy team that Marshall is almost a must win. You know, there's a stretch. So the first two games are Marshall and Air Force, and then after that there's a stretch of games for the next 7 games. You have Houston, UCF, SMU, Memphis, Cincinnati, Tulsa, and Notre Dame all in a row.
Yep.
You know, that is a brutal schedule for anyone. Half the teams of the Big 12 would struggle with that kind of a schedule. And for Navy, if they don't get off to a quick start, things can start to snowball really quickly. So, you know, the team always has the mantra of 1-0, not getting ahead of themselves, but it, as an opener, if not a must win, you know, it at least feels that way.
before I let you go, one last question. Can you give me a name of either someone on the offensive or defensive side that the average college football fan would not know just by glancing at the roster? Someone who's going to be an impact standout player for you?
One player, and this is kind of a typical situation when it comes to Navy football, is that you never really think about the wide receivers. But Navy has a player named Michael Cooper, who the coaches absolutely love. He's named team captain. He's a big target. He's 6'5". But one of the things that the coaches love about him is that he's one of the hardest working players on the team. They make the point that when your best players are also your hardest workers, you're in good shape. And they make that comment referencing Michael Cooper. Now, his impact might depend on who's starting at quarterback, but if it ends up being Lavatai and who has a pretty good arm, he can sling it around. You're going to find that Cooper's going to be his primary target, and he's going to start making some plays downfield that you might not be accustomed to seeing Navy seeing Navy do offensively. Defensively, there's another name that you want to probably keep an eye on is Kevin Brennan, who starts at free safety. He's a guy. He was very highly recruited. It's kind of grown into the role. He's one of the smartest players on the team. And what the coaches like about him is that he's like a coach on the field. When someone's lined up the wrong way, he's the guy that points it out, saying, "Hey, no, you need to line up in this gap, or you need to adjust your alignment this way." He's really the traffic cop in the back of the field. And when you have the coaches feel really confident that having him back there, he's always going to be aligned. The defense is always going to be aligned the right way. And that's a huge factor this year because Navy's really going to rely on their defense. They have 13 guys who started at least one game last year are coming back this year on defense. If you look at the end of last season, as bad as it started out, Navy's defense was playing as good as we've ever seen them play over the last few games. Those weren't slouch games either. They did it against Tulsa, who played in the championship game. Yeah.